What if the situation you've already given up on isn't actually over? What if the thing you believe is buried is only waiting for the right voice to call it back? And what if impossible is just the place where something greater begins? By the time Jesus arrives at the tomb, everything feels final. The stone is already in place. The mourning has already begun. The atmosphere is heavy, not just with grief, but with certainty. Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. Not hours, not recently, 4 days. In their culture, that detail matters. It removes all doubt. There is no hope of recovery, no chance of misunderstanding. This is not a situation that can be reversed. It's over. At least, that's how it looks. Jesus stands before the tomb, surrounded by people who are grieving, confused, and still trying to understand why he didn't come sooner. They had believed he could heal. They had trusted his power. But now it feels too late. And yet, Jesus doesn't respond with explanations. He doesn't defend the delay. He doesn't try to justify anything. Instead, he moves forward. Take away the stone, he says. It's a simple command, but it creates immediate resistance. Martha speaks up quickly, almost instinctively. Lord, by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days. She's not being disrespectful. She's being realistic. She's acknowledging what everyone is thinking but not saying. This is beyond repair. Opening that tomb won't fix anything. It will only make the reality more painful. And that's where the moment becomes deeply personal. Because how often do we do the same? We limit what's possible based on what we can see. We define outcomes based on past experiences. We assume that once something reaches a certain point, it can't be changed. But Jesus responds with a reminder. Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? He brings the focus back, not to the situation, but to belief. Because belief doesn't come after seeing, it comes before. And that's what makes it difficult. Because believing when everything looks hopeless requires trust that goes beyond logic. Still, the stone is moved, not because everything makes sense, but because someone chooses to act anyway. And sometimes, that's what faith looks like. Not full understanding, just a step forward. The tomb is open now. The place that represents finality, loss, and silence is exposed. And Jesus lifts his eyes. He doesn't rush. He doesn't perform for the crowd. He speaks. Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. This is not just a moment of power. It's a moment of revelation. Jesus is not acting independently. He is revealing something about his relationship with the Father, about authority, about connection, about purpose. And then in a voice that breaks through everything, he calls out, Lazarus, come out. No ritual, no complexity, no extended process, just a command, clear, direct, undeniable. And then something happens, something that no one expected, something that goes beyond healing, beyond restoration. The man who was dead walks out, wrapped in grave clothes, alive. Think about that moment, the silence turning into shock, the grief turning into disbelief, the finality undone. Because what everyone thought was over, wasn't. And here's the detail that often gets overlooked. Lazarus doesn't come out free. He comes out still wrapped, still bound, still carrying the evidence of where he came from. And Jesus says, take off the grave clothes and let him go. That part matters, because the miracle didn't end with life being restored. It continued with freedom, because being brought back is one thing, being fully released is another. And that speaks to something deeper, because there are situations in life where something changes, where hope returns, where life begins again. But there are still things holding us back. Old habits, old fears, old identities, things that belong to the past, but are still attached to the present. And just like Lazarus, sometimes we need more than a breakthrough. We need release. We need someone to help remove what's keeping us bound. Because true transformation isn't just about coming back to life. It's about stepping fully into it. But let's go back to the moment itself. Because what makes this story powerful isn't just the miracle, it's the timing. Jesus didn't arrive early. He didn't prevent the death. He allowed the situation to reach its absolute limit, to the point where no one could deny what had happened, to the point where hope was gone, to the point where the only explanation left would be undeniable. And that's where the miracle happens, not at the edge of possibility, but beyond it. Because sometimes what needs to be revealed can only be seen when everything else has failed, when there are no alternative explanations, when there's no way to explain it away. And that's what this moment creates, clarity, not just about what happened, but about who Jesus is. Because raising Lazarus isn't just an act of compassion, it's a statement of authority over death, over time, over what people believe is final. And that changes everything. Because if death itself is not the end, then what is? If what seems impossible can be reversed, then what limits actually remain? And that's the shift in perspective this story invites. To stop defining situations by how they look and start considering what might be possible beyond that. Because the people around the tomb had already accepted the outcome. They had already adjusted their expectations. They had already moved into grief. And Jesus steps into that space and changes the narrative. Not gradually, not partially, completely. And that's what makes it so powerful. Because it challenges the idea that something is too far gone, too late, too broken, too finished. Because if this moment shows anything, it's that finality is not always what it seems. And that raises a question. What in your life feels like it's already over? What situation have you closed the door on? What possibility have you buried? Because sometimes the stone isn't just on the tomb. It's in our thinking. It's in the assumptions we've made, the conclusions we've accepted, the limits we've placed. And the invitation here is to reconsider. Not blindly, but honestly. What if it's not over? What if something is still possible? What if the delay, the loss, the silence was leading to something greater? Because the truth is, the greatest transformations don't always happen when things are still manageable. They happen when everything seems lost, when there's nothing left to rely on, when the only way forward requires something beyond human ability. And that's where this story lands. Not just as a moment in history, but as a reflection of possibility. Because what happened at that tomb wasn't just about Lazarus. It was about showing that nothing is beyond reach, that no situation is truly final. And that even in the darkest, most hopeless moments, there is still a voice that can call life back. And maybe that's what you need to hear today. That whatever feels buried, whatever feels finished, whatever feels beyond repair might not be the end. It might just be waiting. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting for the right voice. Waiting for something greater than what you expected. Because when that moment comes, everything changes. Not gradually, not partially, but completely. And the only question that remains is this. Will you believe it before you see it, or only after? Because belief is what moves the stone. Belief is what opens the space for something new. Belief is what allows the impossible to become real. Thank you for watching this video. If this message spoke to you, don't forget to like, follow the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today.